Hey guys, and welcome to Functional Print Friday. Hashtag not Friday because, well, it's not Friday, and instead of a problem to solve with a functional print on the workbench, I've got a box from Bambu Lab. Now, something I want to make clear right from the start of the video is that this video is not sponsored. I paid full price for this printer. I have no relationship with Bambu Lab. I'm not one of their partners. I don't get any money if you buy this printer. In fact, I don't have a relationship with any of the printers that I'm going to talk about in this video. So something to keep in mind. Most of the videos that I've seen to date are review units that Bambu Lab sent out, or other folks that at least have an affiliate relationship with Bambu Lab. I have neither. I do own a couple of their printers. I like their machines in general, but I know nothing about this machine other than what I've seen in other videos and what I've seen just in the specs list on Bambu Lab's site. So with that out of the way, let's get this box open and see if this thing's any good. Now, one of the questions I get asked a ton as being sort of that guy that knows a bunch about 3D printers in my circle of friends and often down in the comments of my videos is, hey, I'm just starting out in 3D printing. What printer should I buy? And I always ask the budget question. And more often than not, the answer I get to that question is, well, how much do I have to spend? That's a tricky question, right? Because it really depends on what you want to do with it. But I typically recommend for somebody that's just getting started in 3D printing, plan on spending, somewhere between $300 and $500 if you can. And for some people that's too much, and there are budget printers out there that are far less. Some of them are great, some of them not so hot. And I'll talk about that in the end of this video. I'm going to give you my recommendation for 3 different machines to look at, and a 4th one to maybe look at if you're really, really budget conscious, that's right at that $200 mark. The A1 is $399, which I think is a good deal for this machine, just based on the spec sheet, but that's going to depend on what I find when I really start digging in here and we print something with this. And we are. Before the end of this video, this thing's going to be set up and we are actually going to do a functional print, which, by the way, is the focus of this channel. If you're just here to check out a review for this printer, awesome, thanks for coming. But I do functional prints on this channel. I do a new video every single Friday, and I do stuff like this, or this, or this, or even this. If any of those projects look cool to you, check out those videos and maybe consider subscribing to the channel. But for now, let's get into this printer. Okay, so inside the box is this giant bag, and Bambu Lab puts these stickers here where they show you can kind of bunch that bag up and lift the whole thing out of the box. Because I've got it up here on the workbench already, I don't want to do that, but that is kind of a must with their enclosed printers because there's really nowhere to grab. This looks different to me. It looks like we can get this out in pieces, so hopefully I'm not wrong about that. So right here on top, we've got the same, well, at least it looks like the same through the bag, the Bambu textured PEI plate. This is a spring steel sheet, and I believe it is the exact same one that is included with the P1S and that you can optionally get for the X1C. Let's just get this opened up. Yeah, that's definitely the same sheet. It's the newer style gold color PEI textured sheet. These build plates are really nice. I did not get one of these with my Bambu Lab X1C, and I ended up picking one up after the fact, and it's pretty much the only sheet I run in there, and this is also the only sheet I run in my P1S printer as well. So set that aside. Okay, I think most of what's going on the top of the box here is actually all of this stuff for the AMS light, which we're not going to be taking a look at in today's video, but I just want to show you what the top of the box looks like if you do sort of avoid the recommended way to pull this out and open up the box this way. So let me get this stuff out of here and get down to the printer, and I will bring you guys back. Okay, and with the AMS light out of the box, this is what we're left with. And I think at this point, pretty much everything in here is now just the A1 printer. So let me see if I can get the tripod in a position that you guys can actually see me get this stuff out of the box. Not sure what this is yet, but it says keep clear of moving parts. That's also part of the filament arm. Power cord. And I think that's it for this layer. Lift this off. Okay, so I think we're down to just the printer itself now, and I can see we're going to have some limited assembly to do here, which is kind of a bit different from other Bambu Lab printers. The other machines of theirs that I have purchased pretty much are ready to go. I mean, there's packing material to remove from inside the printers, and admittedly that does take a little while to do, but there's no assembly required. It looks like we do actually have some assembly required on this, and I see things are zip tied sort of in place here. So I want to be really careful about how I proceed in actually pulling stuff out of the box. I don't want to break anything. Okay, so this looks like sort of the upright part of the printer, which I think also has the hot end and extruder on it, and it's pretty heavy. I mean, I would say just this part of the printer weighs as much as my entire Prusa MK3s. All right, and remaining in here looks like the base of the printer, and there is foam on the sides here. I think we take the foam. No, I see the printer coming with it. Maybe this side comes out. All right, this is getting tricky. I think this is where we would probably have an easier way of removing this if I had lifted this whole thing out like they intended us to do. So let me set the box on the floor, and I'll pull this out the way Bambu Lab intended, and we'll get the rest of this out. All right, now I think we can just take these off from the sides. Yeah. All right, well, we didn't follow their directions, so I can't complain about that. All right, that's a little disappointing. It looks like that's all the filament that we get with this machine. So that's something to think about. If you're buying this printer as a gift for someone, get them a roll of filament. It can even just be cheap PLA, but get them a roll of filament so they have something to play with, because this is not even going to be enough for a test. Well, it's 20 grams. I guess you could do a really small test print, but they're not going to be able to print anything real with this filament. And this looks like PTF. Oh, you know what? This is probably the PTFE tubes for the AMS Lite. Looks like they gave us a bag of snacks as well. I'm kidding, don't eat that. That is desiccant. All right, now after getting everything out of the box, here is where we're at. And it looks like we have the upright part of the printer. We have the base of the printer. We've got a box here of miscellaneous things. This looks like it's probably a mix of tools and parts. We've got our power cord, something that I still don't know what it is yet, and the, I'm assuming this is the filament arm that goes on the top of the printer. At least that's what it looks like to me. So as much as it pains me to say it, I think I'm going to take a look at the quick start guide so I don't mislead you guys on how to put this thing together. So let me take a quick look through that, and I will bring you guys back as we start to figure out how we get this guy to look less like a pile of parts and more like a working 3D printer. All right, this is broken into steps. So I think what we're going to do is do this one step at a time, and I'll just give you guys sort of a quick shot into how we do each step. So interestingly enough, it wants us to put the build plate on first, and I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it's to protect the surface of this. I mean, the build plate's replaceable. I'm sure this is replaceable too, but it's probably much more expensive than a build plate. So I'm going to trust these. We'll follow these to the T, and we'll see how we do. This does say remove protective film before use, so I'm going to pull this off and put the build plate on here. Guys, all kidding aside, this is actually not that easy to remove. It is really, really stuck on here. I'm sure you can't tell over the video, but I am really yanking on this thing hard. Okay, so we've got that off. Let me put the build plate on. And this is interesting. The other Bambu Lab printers I have, you align the plate in the corners, which can be a little bit awkward sometimes. It looks like this one, they've got it that you're aligning it on these marks here, not these marks, but these actual sort of raised pieces. And then furthermore, it's stopped by these small raised pieces here. That is actually way easier to align than the other Bambu Lab printers I have. So hopefully that is something that they just continue to do on their other new machines. Okay, so it looks like the next thing that we want to do is unlock the heat bed. This is going to be a bit tricky though, because we've got this screen here on the side, so we can't just flip it over and lay it on the build plate. It looks like we got to stand it up on the sides. This might be a little bit awkward to do this and film it. All right, I went and I grabbed a stack of my 3D printed stacking parts trays, because my guess is there's probably a bunch of small pieces in here. Oh, actually this looks, these tools are nicer than the other ones that I've gotten with past printers. They've got a nice T-handle on them. Looks like we've got 2 different sizes of those. I haven't the slightest idea what that is, but I don't think we need it yet. I think what we probably need are the T-handle wrenches and these screws. So we'll get these out. Well, you definitely can't miss them. They're actually coated in orange on the bottom of the printer as well. All right, we've got those 4 out, and while we're down here, let's just take a quick look. It looks like, I'm kind of skipping ahead, but I see we have color-coded connections here for what's probably going to be the wires that are on the upright part of the printer. But let's see what's next in the book. Okay, so this is really interesting. It looks like what they want us to do is stand up the upright part of the printer on the table just by itself, and then we're actually going to pass the base housing that we just unlocked the heat bed on through that at an angle, and then set it in place where it lines up. So let's see how that goes. I'm trying to stay in frame here where you guys can see. There is a bag taped to the bottom part of the frame. Just going to get that out of the way. Actually, maybe we'll tape that like up here. There we go. And so this is where it looks like we're tilting this like this and then sliding it through. I wonder if the heat bed, okay, yeah, the heat bed moves now because we unlocked that. And then it looks like it just drops down in place. Yep, and I think that went all the way down. Okay, the next thing they want us to do is to cut all of the zip ties up here on the gantry. Okay, now what it looks like they want us to do from the instruction page here is slide the heat bed all the way forward, and then apparently there's a cover that's going to come off from the back of the printer. It looks like it slides straight out of the back of the printer. Okay, got that off. Okay, so what it looks like we have to do next is put in a whole bunch of screws. It looks like there's a total of 10 here accessible from the rear behind the heat bed when it's pushed all the way to the front. And then there is 2 more up here in the front when we slide this guy back. So, and they are all marked in green on the printer. You can see 8 there. And then there is 2 more there. And if we slide this forward, or actually slide this back, we reveal 2 more up here. So I'll put you guys back in the stand, and I'm going to get these 12 screws in. So one thing to keep in mind when you're putting a bunch of screws in an assembly like this is don't just put a screw in and tighten it all the way down. I put the first screw in and I snugged it up, and then I backed it off a couple of turns so that everything can still shift to line up the other screws. You don't want to actually tighten anything down until every screw is in place for that part of the assembly. Okay, I've got all the screws in, and one thing I do want to note, if you're putting one of these together, be careful that the stickers are not obstructing the movement of this linear rail down here. So those green marks that showed you where the screws go in, they're actually stickers that are on here. I don't think they're intended to come off, but what I found is that as I put some of the screws in, it actually lifted up the sticker a little bit, and in at least one instance, that sticker was bumping up against the underside of the build plate as it came across. And I don't think it would keep it from working, but you really don't want anything obstructing the path of this guy as it's moving back and forth. So when you put these in, if you notice any of those stickers are kind of pinched up and sticking up into the path, just take them off. There's really no reason for them to be there other than to just indicate where the locations for those screws to go in are. And next we're just simply sliding that long cover back on that we took off 2 steps ago. All right, and for the next step, it looks like it wants us to position the printer in this sort of strange fashion here so that we can get to the underside of it while still having the back supported. So I think we're probably going to be connecting the cables in this bundle here to the underside of the printer. So I'm going to try and duplicate what I've got here in the drawing. Okay, I moved the camera so you can see what's going on the underside here, and this actually does seem reasonably stable. If I was to bump this, I'm sure it would fall off the table, but it doesn't. It looks a lot more precarious than it is. I'm having to push on the front here fairly hard to get this to tip forward. So I think as long as we don't bump it, it should stay in this position. Okay, a couple things to note on this part. So what they want us to do is put this in place and then slide it up. I didn't notice it immediately because these cables are kind of in the way, but that's actually a USB-C connector there that is going to get plugged into a socket up in here that we really can't see as we put this guy in place. And then we're going to connect these later. And there's also a screw here that's already installed. It's already sitting in here. We're going to need that as well. And I'm kind of tempted to take this out if it does come out. Now it looks like it is captured in there. Just be careful that it's not pushed through, because if it's pushed through, it's going to stop us from sliding this into place. You want to make sure it is all the way back here. I'm also noticing, at least on mine, it looks like this is unclipped over here. I think that's on purpose. I think we're probably going to end up routing this wire through there in a future step. So I'm going to leave that like it is. Okay, that clicked in place. I'm going to tighten down that screw. Okay, so yep, sure enough, highlighted here in yellow is this cable that I believe is marked with the yellow. That is going to route through this little spot here, so make sure you don't push that closed until you have that cable in there. And we're going to plug in these two cables up here in the top as well. And they're color coded. I mean, white's going into white, green's going into green, and this yellow one is going into yellow, or I guess that's probably more like orange. All right, once you get all your cables in place, it should look something like this. And again, we're just, matching up the colors. We've got white and white, green in green, and orange in orange. And I have now clicked this close. The only place that I didn't feel like it was really in there good was there's like a spot that you feed through here. There's a recess. It's now under this piece of tape you can't see. It looked to me like it might be able to slip out of there. So that same piece of cloth tape that they'd used to hold this wire in place down here on the frame, I just reused it over that spot there. This actually sits a little bit higher up than everything else on the bottom of this printer because we have these feet here, so it's not like we're raising the bottom of the printer. In fact, even this metal here it's going to stick further down on the printer than the spot here. So I don't see any harm in just reusing that tape to make sure that those wires stay in place. Okay, so it looks like they want us to swing this touch screen around so it's facing forward. All right, and it looks like the next step is to install the purge wiper. That's that piece that I wasn't sure what it was before. That is this one here, and it's a little bit deceiving because they have now flipped the machine around. We're seeing the back, so I believe this actually goes on that side of the machine. So let me flip this around. I'm gonna get the cardboard off of that because I see that the cardboard is no longer on this in the picture, and they've also got that moved over to the center of the gantry. Okay, and once that guy is in place, it looks like we need to install an M3x12 screw, and I think there was one specifically marked for that. There we go, for purge wiper. All right, that screw is in, and when you're putting that screw in, it's really tight. Because it's got blue Loctite on it. So it's almost going to feel like you're cross-threading it. Well, it starts pretty easy. So as long as it starts easy, you're good. But you're going to get in maybe, I don't know, a quarter of the way, and it's going to start to get real stiff. That's just the Loctite on the screw. Just keep going until you feel it bottom out. Okay, so it looks like the next steps in the book are for the assembly of the AMS light. And I am going to do a separate video on that, talking about whether it's worth it to get the AMS light with this machine when you order it. But today I just want to look at the printer itself, so I need to read ahead a little bit here and see how we continue the rest of this without actually setting up the AMS light. In fact, I'm noticing we have like a funnel up here on the top that has 4 inputs, so I might need to remove that or even swap that out with another piece to make sure that we can just print with this guy just by itself. Okay, so as I flipped towards the end of the book, there is a page in here, external spool for non-AMS use case, and it looks like we leave that piece up on there. I'm not sure if this printer always comes with sort of the funnel for the 4 filaments, or if you only get that if you purchase it with the AMS Lite, but that does stay in place even when you're not using the AMS Lite. It looks like we're just going to install the spool holder here on the top bar of the printer, and then run a PTFE tube, and it says the shortest of the ones from the spool holder down to the top of the tool head. One thing I'm noticing right away that I'm not a big fan of is there is a lot of cable here, which I guess there needs to be to reach the extreme end of the bed, but this guy's just kind of flopping around. It'd be interesting to see if there's something we're supposed to do with this before we print, or if there's a suggested position they have for it, because I'm not really a fan of it just flopping around here. All right, to assemble the spool head, all we do is just thread this piece into the main part of the arm. And then this actually hinges open here at the bottom. So we're just going to snap this guy open, slip it over the bar, and then snap it back shut. All right, so the next thing we've got to do is actually plug in the power connector, power this guy on, and set it up. All right, brought you guys over here so you can see what's going on the screen when I flip this guy on. But you know what? Ooh, we're missing something. All right, so right away, this touchscreen looks pretty clear and nice. Say we want English. I am in North America. And we want to connect to Wi-Fi. All right, I'll bring you guys back. I don't want you guys to see my Wi-Fi access information. And I'm guessing there's probably going to be like a QR code or something on here to associate this with the Bambu app and get it registered to my account. But let me get through that stuff and I'll bring you right back. Okay, so what I've done is joined it to my Wi-Fi, and I used the Bambu Handy app that I already had because this is not my first Bambu printer running on my iPhone. I believe there's an Android version available as well, and I just scanned the QR code that was on the screen and it automatically adds it to my account, and I'm letting it go ahead and update the firmware now before we try and do anything with it. All right, while we're waiting for that firmware to update, I really wanted to see if there's something we can do with this cable that's just flopping in the breeze here. And when I flip through the book again, I did notice when I go through the AMS Lite assembly section that I previously ignored because I don't want to set that up on the machine yet, they do actually show this little organizer piece being connected to not only the PTFE tubes running from the AMS Lite, but also onto that cable that's coming off of the side here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put this organizer piece on, even though I'm not putting the AMS Lite on. Let me know down in the comments, and for everyone else's benefit as well, if you buy this without the AMS Lite, does it come with like a different one of these that just has 2 holes in it, or do you get the same one and you just have it for when you later upgrade to an AMS Lite? Let me know down in the comments. All right, that does seem much better already. All right, the firmware update has completed and we are back at the main screen now here on the printer. And it looks like we've got some details showing up at the top and we've got a couple menus that we can click through here. And the screen's pretty responsive. It's not as nice as the screen on my X1 Carbon, but it is way nicer than the screen and navigation on the Bambu P1S. So it looks like in the book, the next thing they want us to do is print a benchy, but this is a functional printing channel, so there's no way we're printing a benchy. I think what I want to do is actually slice up one of these stacking parts trays. And this is what I'm talking about, this stacking part tray here. We'll slice up one of these and print it on this actual printer. And I'll show you guys Bambu Studio because I think for someone that's just getting into 3D printer, the software that you have to use to actually slice things that you download that you want to print is important. So I'm not going to give you like an extensive walkthrough on it. There's plenty of other videos that do that, but I'll show you the basics of how we're going to download something or how we're going to open an STL that we already have on our computer, slice it up, and get it sent over to this printer. All right, I guess before we do that, we should probably actually put some filament on this machine so that when we send the print, it's got something to print with. All right, here we are in Bambu Studio, and I already had the software installed because I've got a handful of other Bambu Lab printers, but it is not difficult to download this and install it. It's pretty much like any other application on your computer. And when we get in here, there's a couple basic controls. I'll walk you through them. Just know this, when you download a model from the internet, from Printables or Thangs or Thingiverse or whatever site you want to look at, those are objects that your printer does not understand directly. That needs to be sliced, or it needs to be turned into toolpaths that the printer understands so it can generate a real solid object for you that hopefully you'll be able to pull off the bed as a finished object. So I've already got a number of those STLs. We're going to go with that stacking parts tray, and in fact, I had that open recently. So now we can see what that object is going to look like in relation to the bed. And pay attention to that. You know, make sure it's the rough idea and size that you were expecting. Some models scale a little bit differently, and they'll open up in like millimeter format, and they'll be either really, really tiny or much bigger than you expected. That looks about right to me, so I think we're good there. We've got the right printer selected. We've got the right plate selected. I've got this set just to standard 0.2 millimeter layer height. And let's go ahead and slice this. All right, that all looks good. And I'm saying looks good because I don't see any abnormalities in the actual lines they're going to make at this print. If we zoom all the way in, these lines that you're seeing are the actual paths that the printer is going to follow to create this object for you. And in fact, we can take this plus sign over on the right-hand side and drag this guy up and down and see what all the individual layers in that print are going to look like. So that looks good. Let's hit print plate. All right, once the calibration process completes and the print starts, we can actually open up the camera here right within Bambu Studio and see the progress of the print. Now, the camera position on this printer and the quality of the camera from a frame rate perspective, it's not great, right? But I'll definitely take it over not having a camera. If you've ever seen the view from the camera in the Bambu Lab X1C or some other higher end printers, this is no comparison. The frame rate is, you know, probably about 1/4 the frame rate that I get in my X1 Carbon and that I've seen in other higher end 3D printers. But again, you know, for the space that this printer is in, the price point of $399, I'm honestly impressed it comes with a camera at all. And, you know, I can definitely see whether the print is working in this view. I can see if I've got a bed full of spaghetti. I can see if it's laid down that first layer, you know, in a decent way. I can see if my supports are still sticking to the bed. All that stuff I can see in this camera view. So while this is nice, let's go down and actually check on the printer in person. All right, so we're back down here at the actual printer itself. And one thing I noticed right away, in comparison to their other printers, the purge lines that you see up here on the front of the build plate are much further forward on the plate. They're not occupying as much space. That's one of the complaints I've had with their other printers. That it's gotten better as the firmware has progressed, but on my X1 Carbon, when I originally got the machine, like probably the front, I don't know, 1/5 of the build plate ends up getting occupied by all of the purge lines and like automatic calibration stuff that it lays down and then reads with the LiDAR. And I understand it needs to do that. The problem is it takes up a ton of the bed. So you've actually got to insert a pause line in your print and be able to clear that off the bed before it starts the real print if you want to use that space all the way on the front of the bed. This looks like it might be far forward enough that you don't even need to scrape that off to get the full utilization of the bed. And if you do, it's only if you want truly the full utilization. I mean, that is no more than, I don't know, maybe 7 millimeters behind the edge of the sheet. So I'm guessing we have at least, I'm going to say 256 by 250 without even clearing off the purge lines. Now this is also running impressively quiet. One of the features of this machine is stepper drivers that reduce the noise. Bambu Lab certainly is not the first company to do this, not just on 3D printers. There's lots of products on the market that have steppers in them, even just like an inkjet printer that have some form of active noise cancellation where the driver is intentionally driving the stepper at a frequency or in a fashion that it doesn't vibrate as much and just make as much noise. But this is, I'm impressed, this is actually quite quiet for as fast as it's printing. All right, it looks like we've got about 25 minutes left in this print. While this is printing, what I'd like to do is go back up to my desk and talk to you guys about the other printers that are available in this space. Like what other printers I think Bambu Lab is competing with this printer. What are the other printers that I've recommended to people in this price category, and why I might recommend this one over some of the others, or maybe some of the other printers over this one, depending on what your use case is or depending on what your budget is. So let's go take a look at that. All right, I mentioned earlier in the video that one of the questions that I get asked all the time is, hey, I'm getting into 3D printing, what printer should I buy? Or, hey, I have a kid who's interested in 3D printing, I have no idea what to get them, what printer do you recommend starting out with? And again, this is usually in that budget, price point of definitely less than $500, probably closer to $200 or $300. And historically, the two printers that I have recommended the most are the Creality Ender 3, just because of the low price point and the fact that it is a functional printer for that price point. Is it the best 3D printer? No, but it's tough to beat it for $159. But I no longer recommend this printer. Creality has released the Ender 3 V3 SE for a price point of, I think this is going to be at $199. Like right now, it's like a pre-order price of $189, and they've got $239 crossed out. I don't think they're ever going to ask $239 for this printer. My guess is that once the quote-unquote pre-order is complete, and they are shipping these as far as I know, but the price on this will probably land at the $200 price point. And I would say don't even look at any other printers if budget is your number one choice. You're not going to get a quality printer for less than $200. They're going to be cutting corners somewhere, and this printer at the $200 price point is a very good machine. If you can afford to spend a little extra, there's other options that I would recommend over this one, including the A1 that we're looking at today. But if your budget is $200 full stop, just buy this printer. You'll be perfectly happy with it. The one recommendation I will make is don't get caught up in modding it. It's a $200 printer. Nothing you do to this printer outside of, maybe a couple little 3D printed things that, I don't know, add some functionality to it that is important to you that the rest of us might not be into, like a tool holder, maybe a thing that snaps onto the side that holds your flush cut snips or whatever. If you want to do that, fine. Don't get caught up in actually swapping parts out and spending money on this printer trying to upgrade it. Just set it aside as your second printer, if you're ready to move on in the hobby, and buy another printer at a different price point. The other printer historically that I have recommended a ton is the Prusa i3 Mark III, then the Mark IIIs, and now the Mark IIIs Plus. I can already hear you guys down in the comments yelling at me, why am I not looking at the Mark IV? It's the one that from a feature perspective is more comparable to the Bambu Lab A1 we're looking at. Yeah, I hear you, but it's another $150 just for the kit of that printer. And now we're twice the price of what the Bambu Lab A1 is. So why are we even talking about this printer, right? Well, I still think there's a lot of pros to this printer. Probably the biggest one is if you're into open source, if you're the type of person that's going to run Linux on your desktop, don't even look at these other machines. You're going to hate them just based on the fact that they're all closed source from China. Just get yourself a Prusa i3 Mark III S Plus and pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist, and don't listen to all the haters that say their printers are better. You'll be perfectly happy with this one. There's nothing wrong with these printers. It's just a shame that Prusa, is still at such a high price point and hasn't really done a lot to innovate in the 3D printer space for honestly some time now. It used to be if you were paying the premium for a Prusa printer, you were getting an open source printer, and you were getting the highest quality hobby level printer that money could buy. Could you spend thousands of dollars on a commercial level machine? Yeah, absolutely. But for a hobby level machine, if you were willing to spend, the $800 to $1,200 historically that these machines cost, yep, it was more expensive than everything else, but you were getting the highest quality printer. You were getting a significantly higher level of quality than everything else in the market. Unfortunately, that's just not true anymore. So if you buy this printer, know that you're getting it because you want to support open source. You want to tinker with it. You want every part to be, a downloadable STL that you can mod to your heart's extent. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when other people are pointing at their Bambu Lab A1 or their P1S or, an AnkerMake machine or lots of other machines out there now and saying, hey, my printer's better, they're probably right. All right, so you heard me mention AnkerMake. That's another one that I recommend a bunch. Now, the hard pill to swallow on this one is that it is at the exact same price point as the Bambu Lab A1. And it'll be interesting to see if Anker ends up reducing this. Oh, I see actually, they have an $80 off code. So it looks like, I don't think this $399 is the price after the 80. I think that you're getting $80 off of that. So that actually does change things a little bit. So if you don't want to spend, if you're not at the $400 price point, if you want to spend, I guess $320, I don't know. Let's put one of these in the cart. Let's see how much we're going to pay. Let's see, copy code, add to cart. Checkout. Discount code. All right, and sure enough, yeah, that did actually make the printer $320. So I don't know, I'm not sure when they started offering this. Let me know down in the comments if you do. I wonder if this is in response to Bambu Lab dropping the A1, because I mean, again, if you're paying the $399 for this printer, it's a hard pill to swallow, because this is also a very nice machine, but the Bambu Lab A1 is better at the $400 price point. If this one stays at $320, I guess if you want to save the 80 bucks, go ahead, but know that there are things you're giving up. And I'll get to that in a minute. At the end here, I'm going to put up a chart that shows all the specs on each one of these printers in comparison, and I'll show you what I think the pros of sort of each category, like the build size and other stuff for each machine is. And the last one, of course, that we're looking at is the Bambu Lab A1. And this is at that $399 price point. And I'll be surprised, honestly, if this thing goes on sale. If you're looking for a 3D printer and you're thinking, oh, boy, those A1s look nice, maybe I'll wait till that comes down in price. Yeah, good luck. I'll honestly be surprised if Bambu reduces the price of this printer anytime in the near future. It probably won't be until they're ready to release another printer. I honestly don't know how they're making and selling this printer at the $399 price point for everything that you get with it. So actually, let's bring up that comparison and let's talk that through. All right, so here's my comparison chart on these printers, and I included my thoughts and my sort of picks on these right here on the screen. So if you don't want to listen to me talk about these, you want to just pause the video and read this stuff for yourself, feel free to do that. But for everyone else, I'm going to walk through and just kind of give you my thought process on these. So if you're looking for the cheapest printer possible, that's still going to be an actual functional machine that you're not going to have to fight with every day, to get a print out of, it's the Ender 3 V3 SE. You're not going to spend less than $200 and get a good printer. Yeah, there's other machines out there. Just stop. Don't even look at them. Don't get sucked into that. Spend the $200 on the Ender 3 V3 SE. It's a great starter machine. Like I said before, just don't get caught up on modding it. When you outgrow that machine, set it aside as your second printer and just buy another machine. If you get into this hobby, you're going to find that one 3D printer is not enough, particularly for long printing jobs. If you get into multicolor stuff that might take days to print, you're going to want another printer that you can just kick out a small part on. So you're probably going to end up keeping at least two 3D printers on your bench or someplace else in your house if you have the room for it. And this is a perfectly fine printer to have as your second printer, even when you outgrow it. The Mark III's would be my pick for the hobbyist tinkerer type person. If you want to support open source, you want to be able to print out a replacement for 90% of the parts on the printer and service everything yourself, not a bad choice. I struggle though with the price. So this is actually the kit price. All the other prices you see here are assembled. Yeah, we had to do some basic assembly on the Bambu A1, but the reality is it didn't take any longer than taking out the shipping screws and unpacking, a lot of these other machines. I wouldn't really call that assembly. It took me probably an hour because I videoed all of it and really took my time so that I could, give you guys some information as I went through it. But if I was building another one, I could probably do it in 10 minutes. And if you're not talking about it while you're doing it, it's probably not going to take you more than 30. If you want to buy the Mark 3S just ready to go, like, it arrives, you unbox it, you take all the packaging off and you hit print, you're going to spend $900 on that printer. And I can't in good conscience recommend this to, people anymore. I used to. Even when a lot of these other printers came out, I still recommended this just because Prusa has done so much to bring this hobby to the point where it's at, but they're really falling behind at this point, both from a feature perspective and even from a quality perspective. I wouldn't really recommend the Anker M5C. I did in the past before the A1 came out. This was sort of the printer that I would recommend people that could afford the $400 price point, and particularly if they wanted to get a printer for their kids, because it's super easy to use. I mean, heck, the printer has literally one button. It also has Wi-Fi. Their app is pretty decent. It's a very easy printer to set up. It's a very easy printer to use. The problem is now we have the Bambu A1 at the same price point, and you get a ton more for your money. So the green here in this chart is actually, I'm highlighting what I believe to be the winner in each one of these categories. So let's go through and look at those. Price, yeah, we already know the Ender 3 V3 SE wins on that. Max build. So I tried to really focus on the sort of the specs here that you're really going to care about as someone that's getting into this hobby, because it's easy to get caught up in spec sheets and argue about ones that just don't really matter. But build volume is one that really does matter. This is the maximum size of something that you can print, and you're quickly going to find out that regardless of whatever the build volume is, it's never big enough. There's always some design that you have that's not going to fit the build volume of the printers you own. And that's where I'm at right now, by the way. I bought this A1 because I wanted to be able to review it for you guys, and also just have another printer to add to my farm and kick parts out as I prototype stuff. But really what I want is a large format printer. I want one that has a build volume way bigger than any of these, and I'm still looking. I'm not sure what I want to get yet, but the A1 is the clear winner there. It's got a build volume of 256 by 256 by 256, and these figures are in millimeters, by the way. Now, there's not a huge difference here, but do notice that the most expensive printer in the lineup has the smallest build volume. That would be the Prusa Mark 3S. Build plate. This is the thing that your print actually gets stuck to while it's printing. So, you're not printing on the heat plate itself. You're putting down some piece of material. It's called a build plate that the printer prints onto. And then when it's done, you're taking the print off this plate and you're reusing it. All of the printers, with the exception of the Ender 3 V3 SE, utilize a powder-coated textured PEI over spring steel. And this is absolutely the way to go. It is, in my opinion, for most materials, the best build plate that you're going to use. Bed leveling. This is one that budget printers just didn't used to have. It was actually one of the reasons to buy a Prusa Mark III when they first came out. And now look, across the board here, even our cheapest printer, the Ender 3 V3 SE, has fully automatic bed leveling. So that's the same across every one of these. Flow rate. Now, I want to prefix talking about flow rate in that these figures, I don't know that there's really consistency in these figures. My guess is that all these manufacturers are probably measuring this in a slightly different way, but I do think that these are close to what the actual flow rate is if we were to compare these across the board with the same material. And the reason I'm calling out flow rate as an important spec is this is really the limiting factor in how fast you can go in printing. This is how much hard plastic, how much hard solid plastic filament can we feed in off the roll and pump out as melted plastic that makes up some part of the object that we're trying to get. My guess is that these two are probably equal. that the realistic maximum flow rate on each one of these machines is probably closer to 25 millimeters cubed. And then down here at the other end, these two machines both list 15 millimeters cubed. I don't think that's quite realistic either. Both of these are probably closer to 11 or 12 millimeters cubed. So really these break into two categories. The Ender 3 V3 SE and the Prusa MK3s are going to print around the same speed from a flow rate perspective, and I think these two up here are going to print from about the same speed. Now, as we get down to the differentiators, I realize this one is subjective, but I highlighted the A1, as the overall winner down here for me in this category. But let's just look through these. So differentiators on the Ender 3, yeah, it's cheap. I mean, that's pretty clear. None of the other printers on here are at the $200 price point. Prusa MK3s, we talked about it before. I've beaten it to death at this point. The main differentiator is that everything on this printer is open source, from the hardware design to the slicer to the firmware. It's all open source, and I do respect Prusa a lot for that. The Anker M5C, main differentiator, the focus on simplicity. I mean, the printer has one button for better or for worse, and they do have a phone app that, as I understand it, is getting better. When it first launched, it wasn't so hot, but they have made some strides to improve that. And you can, right from your phone, select the model you want to print and get it going. So this, I think, is well, I struggle with recommending this one. It's even a printer for, to buy from a simplicity perspective for your kid, if you're a parent watching this, because, now we have the A1 at the same price point, and honestly, it's just as easy to use based on, what I've seen in my use of it today. So yeah, I can't really in good conscience recommend this printer anymore. Which leaves us with the Bambu Lab A1 from a differentiators perspective. This is the big one right here. So let's say, we buy any one of these printers and now we decide, hey, I want to do some of that multicolor printing. If you're into minifigs, yeah, it takes a while, but being able to print in all the different colors versus having to hand paint everything afterwards, it's pretty cool. And even from a functional printing perspective, I do a ton of stuff where I have lettering on prints and I just do the lettering as a different color. And yeah, you could manually switch the filament in any one of these other machines to get that effect on lettering. But if the lettering is on the side of a print, so maybe it's across 100 layers, are you going to do 100 manual filament changes? No, you're not. But on the A1, for an extra, I think it's less than 200 bucks, you can add on the AMS light and have 4-color printing. And you don't have to do it on day one. You can buy the printer at $399 and you can add that on after the fact. There is no multicolor add-on for the Anker M5C or for the Ender 3 V3 SE. There is for the Prusa MK3s, but it's not a great option. It's buggy and it is expensive. I would not recommend it. Other big differentiators for the Bambu A1, the software is really mature. Bambu Studio works really well. And I threw this one up here even though I've not had an opportunity to use it a bunch myself. In this printer, Bambu Labs has an eddy sensor that is able to feel the pushback on the nozzle. So when you're printing and you're trying to push too much filament out, it actually creates an upward pressure because there's no place for that filament to go. It can't squeeze out at the end of the nozzle because there's no place for it to go. You're right up against a solid surface. So it's able to use that pressure feedback from the nozzle to actually adjust the flow rate in real time. This is too new for me to really call out as a killer feature, but it's something that none of these other machines have. And if it works as well as they claim, I actually think it is a pretty killer feature. From a hot end perspective, almost all these machines will go up to 300 degrees Celsius. The Ender 3 V3 SE only goes up to 260. Nozzle, why does this matter? Well, so this is what the plastic is actually pumping through, as you're printing. And historically, these were always brass on printers, and that really wasn't an issue. But as we've gotten more exotic filaments, heck, even glow-in-the-dark filaments that have additive, there's something mixed into the plastic. If that's abrasive at all, brass is a pretty soft metal, and it wears out pretty quickly. Going with at least a stainless steel nozzle, which you're getting on the Anker M5C and the Bambu A1, is going to mean that that nozzle is going to be able to withstand the abrasive properties of that filament for longer. And above stainless steel is hardened steel, which is even better. And none of the printers here on the chart come with that stock. I believe you can get a hardened steel nozzle for most of the printers up here. I'm not 100% sure on the Ender 3 V3SE. I think you can. But I know you can for the other ones on the screen. Network. So you noticed when I set this printer up, I paired it with my account, and then we printed right from within the Bambu Studio app. We're able to do that because the printer has a Wi-Fi connection. And you can do the same thing on the Anker M5C printer. The Ender 3 V3SE and the Prusa MK3s, they don't have that. There's no network connectivity at all. You can add it on the Mark3s. In fact, I've done that on mine. I have a Raspberry Pi connected to mine that has Wi-Fi, and I can actually send jobs from within Prusa Slicer over the Raspberry Pi right to the printer. But that's an add-on cost for that. It's more tinkering to get that set up. And for the Ender 3 V3SE, I don't think there are any options. You're stuck just loading your print onto the SD card and connecting it to the printer. But again, at a $199 price point, can you really complain about that? I mean, save it on the SD card and just walk over to the printer. Again, it's a budget printer. Camera. This gets back to that. I can't, I'm almost in a little bit of disbelief that Bambu is able to offer this printer at $399 for everything you get, because, everything we already talked about. It's got the largest build volume. It's got the ability to add on the multicolor. It's got that additive flow rate compensation. It's got Wi-Fi. It's also got a camera right out of the box, and that's something that no other printer up here has. Now, is the camera good enough that you're going to want to sit there and watch the print from Bambu Studio or in the Handy app? No, probably not. It's not a great camera, but it is good enough to see if your print is failing, and that is huge. I don't know about you, but when I start a print, I don't sit there. I don't want to sit there and watch it for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or if it's a really big complex print, 40 hours. I've got other things to do. I work from home, so I'm usually at my computer, and if I have a job running, I'll just leave Bambu Studio open, and I'm not watching it all the time, but I'll occasionally tab over to that window and just make sure the print looks like it has not failed. And, failures are not super common in 3D printing nowadays, but they do happen. Particularly if you have a really complex print with a bunch of supports, you're going to have failures. And if you don't notice it right away, you're liable to also have, potentially even damage to the 3D printer. You can have filament get all sort of gobbed up on the nozzle and all melt together and make a giant mess that is almost impossible to clean up. So the camera, I think, is really a big differentiator on the Bambu A1, particularly at this price point. It's pretty much expected on any printer in the over $500 category at this point. Most of the printers from other competitors, you're going to see a camera in there of some fashion. But to have it on a printer at this price point that offers all these other features, again, you can see it right down in my notes here. Bambu's crushing it right now. I wish they had more competition, but they just don't. I mean, Anker reducing the price on this printer, at least right now, down to $320 with that coupon code. Maybe they'll come out with something else that's at the same price point that has, the same features plus a few other twists that would make me want to look at that machine. But right now, you can't go wrong buying this A1 printer. I mean, like any other printer up here from a beginner perspective, you're probably going to outgrow it eventually. If you find yourself wanting to do like carbon-filled nylon and other, exotic engineering type filaments that require a heated enclosure, much higher temperature on the heat bed, you're going to be looking at a different printer. That's not this one. I mean, even if they offer some sort of enclosure, or you can get like a zipper enclosure from a third party, it's not going to give you the capabilities to do those high-end engineering filaments. But for PLA or for most other things that you're going to do, you just can't go wrong with this. You just can't. Again, it's my overall winner. If you really hate Bambu Labs, if they've done something to just piss you off, you can't stand them, you refuse to own a Bambu Labs printer, buy the Anker M5C. you'll be happy with that one as well. Just, know that you could have had a camera and some other cool features if you bought the A1 instead. So, all right, it's been plenty long enough. Let's go take a look and see if our print's done. And look at that, I talked long enough that our print is done. So I mentioned that this is the spring steel sheet with PEI coating on it. What's great about that is we can actually lift this right up, and because this is flexible, we can just bend it and this print is going to pop right off of this build plate. No drama whatsoever. So let's just take a look at the quality on this, and yeah, it looks really good. And for this, this took 40 minutes to print. This would go even faster if we were using a high flow filament. This is the filament that I put up here is just, it's Sunlu Black. I buy it because it's cheap. I think it's like 15 bucks a roll. I will link that down in the description of this video. If you're looking for a cheap, good quality filament, that is what I have been recommending. But it's not the fastest. If we bought the Bambu Lab filament, we probably could have done this job in closer to, maybe 25 or 30 minutes. But even 40 minutes for a print in this size, particularly at this quality level, is really good. I mean, this guy is, I don't know if you can see that, it might be too close to the lens. The quality on this is really, really good, especially for 0.2 millimeter. I can't even really see or feel the layer lines on this. The extrusion, honestly, the consistency of the extrusion looks really, really good. I wonder how much of that comes down to that extrusion compensation from the pressure sensor in the extruder on this guy. I'm interested to see how some more complex models look, because that's something I've been struggling with even on my other higher end machines, is having that consistency of extrusion, not getting under extrusion or over extrusion on the material on some prints. I might have to pick some prints that I've really struggled with and just see how this machine does with them. Let me grab another one of the parts trays that I have off of another machine and see how this stacks in it. Yep, and that fits in there perfect as expected. And there you have it. That is my initial look at the Bambu Lab A1 printer, and I'm really impressed with everything that I'm seeing so far, especially at this price point of $399 for everything that you're getting on this. I don't think there's anything out there that really competes with this right now if you've got the budget for a $400 machine to get into the hobby. So if you've got any questions, put them down in the comments below. If you disagree with anything I've said, same thing, put it down in the comments. Let's talk about it. My opinion is certainly not the end all be all. I'm open to discussion, and I do always try and read the comments and reply whenever I can, but even if I don't reply, someone else I'm sure is going to chime in and share their opinion with you as well. And I don't generally do review videos like this on the channel. I do mostly functional prints. I do a new video every single Friday. So if you're into functional printing, if you want to see more stuff like, stacking parts trays or replacement parts for cars, or, just other things that add on to the features and functionality of other stuff that you've got. 3D printers are a tremendous way to extend almost any hobby, because you can make your own part to do exactly what you want versus just being limited by, the functionality of something out of the box. If that sounds interesting to you, check out some of my videos, and when you're ready, if you hit that subscribe button, guys, I'll see you next Friday.